at the fifth trumpet. Now in Revelation chapter number 8 and verse number 13, it talks about the three woes. And I beheld and heard an angel flying through the midst of heaven, saying with a loud voice, woe, woe, woe to the inhabitants of the earth. And these are called in prophecy the three woes. The fifth trumpet is the first woe. The sixth trumpet is the second woe. The seventh trumpet is the third woe. Now when the fifth trumpet sounded, we read this, and the fifth angel sounded, and I saw a star fall from heaven, and he opened the bottomless pit. And there arose a smoke out of the pit as the smoke of a great furnace, and the sun and the air were darkened by reason of the smoke. I'll never forget the day I picked up, it was either Time magazine or Newsweek magazine, and I saw this picture. You may remember seeing this picture. This is a picture of the skies of Kuwait after Saddam Hussein set 700 oil wells in Kuwait on fire, mad because he was being driven out. So he decided to destroy everything he could. For over 3 months, $5 million worth of oil was burned up per day as a result of him setting these oil wells on fire. And furthermore, the sun was not seen in Kuwait for over 3 months. Now the prophecy said that when this fifth angel sounded, it said that a smoke came up out of the pit, and the sun and the air were darkened by reason of the smoke. The picture you're seeing right now is a picture that was taken at noon, but it looked like it was midnight. And when I saw that, I thought, Lord, could the Gulf War be the sounding of the fifth trumpet? Well, I continued to read in the prophecy, and verse 7 through 10 tells us more about this prophecy. You're looking at helicopters here, and the reason they're there is because the prophecy says, in the shapes of the locusts, I saw locusts with breastplates of iron, faces of men, their stings were in their tails, and the shapes of the locusts were like unto horses prepared unto battle, and the sound of their wings was as a sound of chariots of many horses running to battle. Now, if you lived 2,000 years ago, you had never seen an airplane, you had never seen a helicopter. How would you describe a helicopter? I mean, you're having a vision, you're seeing these billows of smoke, and all of a sudden these helicopters come flying out of this smoke. What would you say? These locusts have breastplates of iron. They got the faces of men. The gunners back there in the tail, their sting is in their tail, and the sound of their wings is the sound of many chariots going to battle. I thought, well, that's about what I'd say. Make sense to you? Well, that's not all it says. It went on to say in this prophecy, and they had a king over them, which is the angel of the bottomless pit, whose name in the Hebrew tongue is Abaddon, but in the Greek tongue hath his name Apollyon. I looked up both of these words. First of all, Apollyon in my Greek dictionary, and the definition given was a destroyer. Well, then I went to the German Tribune. I also looked up the word Abaddon, and the meaning of the word Abaddon is also the destroyer. And I found out that many of the translations of the Bible actually translated this passage, the destroyer. They didn't say Abaddon or Apollyon. I have a 26 translation Bible on my desk, and many of the translations said they had a king over them called the destroyer. Well, back in 1991, I was subscribed to the German Tribune at the time, and they had an article on the Gulf crisis. I'm reading the article, and it said, Saddam, quote, the destroyer, Hussein. And I thought, why did they say the destroyer? And I knew this scripture was in there, and I knew what that meant, but I thought, maybe it's a coincidence that they would call him the destroyer. And so I saved the article, but I didn't say anything about it to anybody because I wasn't sure. However, December the 13th of 1997, I received my Jerusalem Post through the mail. My wife was driving me somewhere to speak, and so I took it along to read it as I was going down the highway. There was a story in there, a human interest story. A Jewish family had just escaped from Baghdad in Iraq, one of the very last Jewish families to make it out. And so this lady was telling her story in the Jerusalem Post. It was not a religious article, it was not a prophetic article at all, but she was telling her story. And she was telling everybody that when Saddam Hussein was being carried by his mother during the pregnancy, she had horrible problems, so much so that the doctors recommended an abortion. Saddam's mother did not want to get an abortion, so she suffered through the pregnancy, but she moved into the Jewish sector of Baghdad, and the Jewish doctors helped her through the pregnancy. But when Saddam Hussein was born, she decided to name him Saddam because Saddam means the destroyer. Now that was in the Jerusalem Post. So now I found it in the German Tribune. Now I found it in the Jerusalem Post. And I said, God, how could this be? And then on the next question was, how could it not be? Here you've got sun being hid by the smoke. You got the locusts, the attack helicopters coming out of the smoke. And you've got a king over them by the name of the destroyer. And Saddam's name literally means the destroyer. And I have pretty well come to conclude that the fifth trumpet sounded in 1991. Does anybody know how many trumpets there are? Does anybody know what happens at the last trump? 1 Corinthians 15. At the last trump, this mortal must put on immortality. This corruption must put on incorruption. We shall not all sleep, but we shall all be changed in a moment, in a twinkling of an eye, at the last trump. Don't look now. But if the fifth trumpet has sounded, we got one to go. And then the Lord himself shall descend from heaven with a shout.